Respected Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Tirumati Nirmala Sitharaman, to this meeting, interaction with the representatives of the trade and industry. Requesting Madam and her team to please assume the dais. A good discussion increases the dimensions of everyone who takes part. So said the American writer Randolph Bourne. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar, Vanakkam. I am Swapna Nanu Ambat, ADG Vigilance, South Zone, representing CBDT, and your Master of Ceremonies for this morning. Welcome to the land of Tiruvallur, whose ideas on ethics, politics, and economics are still relevant today. Vari perukki valampaduthu utravai aaraivan seiga vinai. A state who analyzes the sources for revenue and constantly takes efforts to increase revenue and generate wealth, removes hindrances on a day-to-day basis, is the best one for the task. Welcome to the post-budget interaction with representatives of trade and industry being held by Honorable Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Tirumati Nirmala Sitharaman. Respected Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Tirumati Nirmala Sitharaman, Secretaries to Government of India accompanying the Minister, our special guests, representatives of trade and industry present here to share their views. At the outset, I would like to thank our Honorable Finance Minister for having selected Chennai as one of the centers at which to have the interaction with the industry and for giving us a chance to have this interaction. I now request Principal Chief Commissioner of Income Tax, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, Tirumati Geeta Ravichandran ma'am, to welcome Honorable Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, with a sapling. I welcome the senior secretaries from the Ministry of Finance to our interaction. This morning's entire discussion centers around our special guests who are present here today, representing the various sectors of the industry, who will be sharing their views with our team. Without further ado, I now request Honorable Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Tirumati Nirmala Sitharaman, to deliver her opening remarks before we actually move on to the interaction.
Vanakkam and good morning. We are continuing with the tradition that was started a few years ago, that once the budget gets presented in the Parliament, in the intervening time between the first part of the session and the next, where it gets passed, the Finance Act gets done, we've made it a point to go around the country taking the budget with the officials accompanying me, so that we can have directly and through an interaction some inputs from the industry, their views, their concerns, and so on. So it is necessarily an exercise in looking at the budget, the proposals, and if any, taking on board anything else which the industry might have in their mind. Much has been said about the budget already, so I am not sure if I need to expand on it now, except for the underlying principles which made us come up with this budget, this time the way it has come out. We wanted a sense of continuity from the previous budget, which was lots more exhaustive in the sense of laying out a formulation, a principle, a framework, and so on. Then provide stability for the revival from the pandemic and above all, give a predictability to the tax regime. These were the guiding principles, and we continued with the belief that it was through the infrastructure spending that we can have the multiplier effect. We kept putting more money, this time even more money, into infrastructure spending. We've also taken a futuristic call about India going through the next 25 years, leading to India at 100, wherein we looked at adapting technology in various spheres of life, whether it is from agriculture or looking at the ways in which startups in India have spread the innovative solutions for very many of our issues. So spread the digital programs to medicine, to education, to agriculture, to even learning, universities, and so on. So broadly, that has been the highlights of this budget. It's of course taken shape through various different schemes which have been announced. But this in brief is the picture about the budget, and I would think more can be achieved by us interacting rather than me doing a one-side, again, speaking about the budget about which you're familiar with by now. And with the presence of the secretaries here, I think specific issues of concern can also be heard and responded to. So I would keep my opening statement to this brief statement. I'll request a very free and frank exchange, which might help all of us. Thank you very much.
With Madam's permission, can we throw open the floor for questions, ma'am? We are throwing open the floor for questions, queries, and comments. I will call out the names of representatives, and the mic will be passed to you, and you may please ask your query. The first name, Mr. Ganapati Ramachandran, Non-Executive Chairman and MD, Trigin Tech, famous for developing the CoWIN app. So.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you, Madam, for taking time off and being with us. At the outset, let me add to all the felicitations that you've already received on this budget. And of course, I would like to highlight HITS as increased in allocation to infra and medical, increased FDI in insurance, steps taken towards faceless assessment and self-assessment by taxpayers, the option to file particularly updated returns for 2 years. Rather than calling it a mess, perhaps an appeal, India is on a threshold of a major positioning in the world in the tech space, particularly relevant to Industry 4.0. And if you really look at it, one of the things that will generate this is investment in deep tech. And if you compare the growth of Route 128 in Boston and Silicon Valley, one of the things that is missing is availability of easy or access to risk capital. I have met you in the past in my capacity as Chairman IIT Madras Entrepreneurs Forum, and I would indeed love to see, in deep tech, ma'am, 85 to 90% fail, but the 10 to 15 that succeed can be transformational, make India a company of the ages. Can we not set aside 500 crores year on year and be willing and be brave enough to write it off and put a mechanism wherein we can work with technological excellence institutions like the IITs, SEMs, which are prevalent across India, and take lab-to-market products in a more structured way. And likewise, if corporates can be given a scheme to adopt a startup policy, it would help in writing off this as an R&D expenditure, and we can possibly increase our R&D spend from the present 0.7% to internationally accepted levels of 5 to 6%. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Do I have to respond to this? Because it's going to be a mixed bag of a response. We've never been averse to spending money. I wouldn't be against giving that money annually. But hasn't it been made available through various departments, science and technology, research in agriculture, research in pharma, and so on. So R&D budget for the government doesn't come from one particular place. Although in the last budget we did say we will have a research foundation through which all these monies from various ministries will be pooled in and that can be used. Now, has that not come out being helpful? And if that has not been useful, tell us why. It's not useful because there was no fund. There's something else which is probably worrying you. So the question probably, I fully appreciate you are not part of the government, so you're welcome to ask the way you want to ask. But it's not the money. Money has been given. What's happened to it? Why is it not accessible if it's not accessible? The second question is, also please, you've been giving us some research, some fiscal considerations for spending on R&D. It was stopped. Please give it again. I was looking at the data. When it was given, no great appreciable amount have come through in terms of research because the tax concession is available. Now when it is not available, I've been told it's not available, otherwise I'm very willing to spend tons of money on it. So it's a conundrum. I'm not faulting anybody. When we gave it, nothing happened. When we don't give it now, oh my God, we've bags full of money lying here, you've not allowed us. So I want to know where actually is the problem. Is it money from your end? It's not money from my end. If it's not money from your end as well, tell us where the problem is. So I think both sides have been talking a lot. Let's see where the problem is. You please do tell us specifically, not now, you may write to us as to where the problem lies.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Ramachandran. Moving on to the next. Ms. Suman Gopalan, Freshworks.
Hello, ma'am. First and foremost, thank you so much.
Just 1 minute. I don't know why there isn't enough light there. I can't see any of their faces clearly. Huh? If there's a bit more light, it'll be... Yeah, now I can see on this... Oh, right. I can get it now. You want us to see her through the television screen rather than... Okay, fine. Okay, go on.
I can come
Go
up
on.
front if that works. Honorable Minister, first and foremost, thank you so much for having us all here. I think it's a fabulous one to be able to participate and give inputs on what we believe are real issues. I represent a startup called Freshworks, and I've been extremely pleased to see how much impetus there is for startups today. And even our Honorable Prime Minister has made it. We have a startup day now, and the fact that we've stated that the next 25 years will be powered by startups. But one of the challenges that we all face, whether we are startups or scale-ups, is talent. And one thing we've been seeing across the world is this whole thing around non-availability of talent because there is this great resignation, migration, all of that. Honorable Minister, my question is slightly different, which is there is a huge amount of talent in the country, but we have a problem where half of our talent don't participate in the workforce today. And I think you know what I mean, that we have less than 20% of women participating in the workforce. And while this is slightly away from the budget, one of the things I would like to ask that we consider is how do we make it possible, or how do we incentivize for more women to actually come back? We have so many talented women. I think the government's done a fabulous job with the whole Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, with the whole educate the girl child. We have so many educated girls and women in this country. Participation in tertiary education is one of the highest. Yet, we don't see them participate in the workforce. And we have a problem of the leaky bucket, right? They all take a break and they never come back. Is there a way we can incentivize and think of ways in which we can bring them back? And I think we can potentially solve a lot of the challenges we see. So many talented women just don't work, and we make it incredibly hard for them to not participate. So one thing to consider, I would just suggest, is there a way in which we can incentivize and consider having greater participation of women that will also solve not just the talent challenge, but a lot of challenges that we see in the society as well? Because when half the force doesn't participate in the economy, how do we really think about making it a $1 trillion economy? So that'll be my suggestion. But once again, I'd say thank you for all the impetus for startups in this budget. Thank you.
Your suggestion was more of a question. And going by the same spirit, I'd like you to answer it.
Sure.
How exactly do you think we can do anything to get more women onto formal jobs, for which, as you admit, I also accept, there is enough skill among these women, girls. So tell us what to do. If not now, do give us suggestions as to how I can get them on board.
I have a couple, ma'am, that I will throw out there. I think we've done phenomenally well when we have said, we should have women on the boards, right? While I hate idea of quotas only powering it, but I think it provides impetus for companies to think differently. So I have seen that there's tremendous amount of movement we've had when we've said women should be on the boards of companies, etc. Is there a way we can think about incentives for bringing women back to the workforce, right? Today, there's just no incentive. It is a lot of hard work to do that, right? Because a lot of times when you take a break for a year or so, and I think women should have the ability and the opportunity to make those decisions, but there is absolutely no incentive for any corporate today to spend the time and the effort to bring them back. So can we think about ways in which that 50% of our population that doesn't participate, we find ways to bring them back into the workforce? So it's just one way I've seen, for instance, say Singapore government does this, where they incentivize corporates when you bring back, say, Singaporean residents or working women to participate. So that's one way to think about it. But I do think if we can really shine the light on this and hold corporates accountable, I think we can make a lot more progress. So that's just my submission, ma'am.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next question. Mr. Chandramohan Satyan, Managing Director, Hatson Agro Product Limited, Chennai.
Good morning, Madam. I would like to place on record the appreciation for the budget that has been put through. My question is more regarding the subsidy systems that many state governments take up on behalf of cooperatives, which puts the cooperatives on an unequal platform with private sector, which again competes in the same segment. So if you have any thoughts, or what is the way forward out of this when private sector and cooperatives compete in the same market with subsidies given separately by state governments?
Give me an example.
Right. There is a 3 rupee subsidy that is being given by the Tamil Nadu government. There is a 5 rupee subsidy that's been declared by Rajasthan cooperatives. There is a 6 rupee subsidy being given by Nandini in Karnataka. There is a 4 rupee subsidy given by Odisha government.
For all cooperatives.
Only through cooperatives. Which
For all cooperatives.
For all cooperatives.
Not just those which are government cooperatives, meaning sort of government cooperatives.
Quasi-government cooperatives, madam.
So quasi-government, government gives.
Yeah.
That's the one which you're against.
And they compete in the same segment for the same markets. I just wanted to place it on record, madam.
Taken, point taken.
Thank you.
Mr. G.R. Ananta Padmanabhan, Managing Director, GRT Jewellery India Private Limited, Chennai.
Happy morning, ma'am. It's an honor to receive you here in our town. I have two requests, one from the jewelry industry and one from the hospitality, hotels. We are seeing a great movement of people moving and paying by digital payments. The upper limit is now only 1 lakh. For a jeweler, I think at least if you can make it 2 lakhs to pay through digital means, UPI, all the bank apps, it would be very useful for us, ma'am. As far as the hospitality hotels, we have been through a tough period because of COVID. We have been requesting for industry status for a long time. When we approach banks, and it works a lot. And hospitality and jewelry are very big, large employers. Second thing is in terms of CRZ, the Coastal Regularization Zone. Our request should be to be more practical, like the other countries in the world. We have one of the most beautiful shorelines in the world. At least based on projects, based on merits, if you can consider a little relaxation, because all this nature is going like 2-3 hours flight to Asia and all the countries that are doing well in the beach, to really help us, just to relax the CRZ on a merit basis. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
On the cards, I'll certainly have Sanjay, cards, and also on the hospitality, we've had very good consultation recently, only last week, maybe 4 days ago. Sanjay, would you want to speak about it?
Ma'am, we have CMD Indian Bank and Indian Overseas Bank with us. My impression was that for IMPS, the limit is perhaps 5 lakh rupees, but that is subject to correction, sir. Ma'am, may I request CMD Indian Bank or Indian Overseas Bank, if any one of them is here in the house, the mic can be given to them and they can better respond to this question.
Good morning, ma'am. Yeah, last time also we discussed this issue in the jewelers meeting that you had for that year. And it was just decided that NPCI would look into this matter to increase the limit.
Yes, but Partha, how long is it since we had that meeting? We presented a budget in between as well. You're still looking into it? Would you have an engagement with the NCPI and tell us?
Yeah, definitely, ma'am.
Definitely. But on the issue of your coastal, it's a very attractive issue. I don't know if I can respond immediately, but I agree. There's good potential, and thank you for highlighting that. But Somnathan, you had something more to add on the card? No, not at all.
With all due
Sanjay,
respect, tourism is the largest industry in the world, so we might as well capitalize on it.
Yeah, I've had a special meeting post-budget with them, with the tourism industry, with all the secretaries being present, only 4 days ago. I had first the tourism and then the hospitality. And we've sat with them to see what.
Just an opportunity to say thank you, ma'am. This is giving a lot of energy. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ms. Mallika Srinivasan, CMD, Tractors and Farm Equipments Limited.
Morning, ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity. I think first I'd like to, I don't really have any questions. I'd like to just make some observations and request for your view on something. And really is first to express my appreciation for the blueprint that has been laid out for the future for the country in this budget. The sharp focus on long term and the emphasis on the core issues that really will make India progress in the future. And I'll just touch, of course, everyone knows this well, building on Prime Minister's vision of Gati Shakti and Atmanirbhar Bharat. And I particularly would like to thank you for that directional policy shift in terms of agriculture towards more tech, more ag tech, focus on ag tech, focus on participation by government through blended funds, etc. for ag tech. So it's been really a welcome directional change when it comes to agriculture. One local issue and a little broader national point. This is the home of the tea industry. And this tea industry, we have seen plantation boards revamp being announced, and it affects the tea industry. But in this budget, we've seen it's a very small budget for the tea board, but it has been cut back fairly substantially. Only point I have to make is that there are pending dues to the industry for the past incentive schemes. And how could we address that? And given that the role of the board is changing, is there a deregulation for the tea sector that needs to be looked at? Because we're controlling leaf prices as input, but is there a regulation that deregulation that goes hand in hand with that? That's my only comment in a more local context. And I think today, it's not quite a budget point, but as appropriate, your comments, please, as appropriate. In terms of what is before everyone's mind today is this whole Russia-Ukraine crisis, and how is that going to affect India? How is that going to affect us in terms of, be it fuel and energy, or in terms of fertilizer, potash coming mainly from those regions of the world, and so on, inflation, subsidies on fertilizers and urea, all of these issues, and I think if from your side on that, please.
On the T board and the regulation or deregulation or even resources being curbed, I don't think resources are being curbed for any other reason. They probably are looking at it in very different ways, but there has been in commerce for over several years attempts to have these boards function more efficiently. They've done their bit, I'm not faulting them, but there's opportunity for being a lot more proactive, a lot more dynamic. And therefore, the ministry probably is looking at ways in which they can have them spruced up a bit more, remove the flab, and have efficient functioning. I was quite deeply involved in getting the tea industry, when I was in commerce, far more easily regulated rather than keep the old-fashioned, auctions and the board controlling and so on, and also the changing reality in, for instance, Assam, where it was getting a lot more fragmented, smaller holdings were coming in. So I think there is a very clear roadmap of wanting to strengthen the industry, recapture some of those signature tea that we've been producing in this country, and also making sure that it becomes far more with value addition. And I don't think the intent is to keep them less resourced. However, I'll have a detailed, let's say, discussion with the Commerce Ministry and get back to you on it. But on the larger issue of what is prevailing in Ukraine, what is happening about India's position in the UN Security Council and so on, is widely open and aware through the press releases and the press commentaries which the External Affairs Ministry is making. But as regards what that is going to have as a bearing on our immediate imports and also on equally on our exports to Ukraine, we are rightly worried about what comes from there, but I'm more worried, if not equally, more worried about what's going to happen to our exporters who are doing very well, particularly the pharma sector to Russia and Ukraine, and also some of the main exports which were going from here. Now what is going to happen to them, even for the exports already done, payments and so on. So on both these issues, I think I would have a comprehensive, we are already looking at emergent situation, but I will have to have a complete assessment done through the various concerned ministries and only then be in a position to comment on it. But you can be assured that we are fairly seized of the matter in its granular form, because it's going to have an impact on the essentials which come, like edible oils, which come from Ukraine, sunflower oil, and so on. So, yes, parts of the fertilizer and so on. So the discussions are on between ministries. We are seized of the matter, but what kind of solutions we're going to come up with is something which all of us will have to wait. But equally, if anyone has a view or a perspective on this matter, because you're all people engaged in buying and selling from these troubled regions, I'll be quite happy to hear so that the ministry can be better informed as to what your perspectives are on this matter.
Thank Thank you, ma'am, for elaborating on that particular issue. The next query, Mr. Karumuthu T. Kannan, Managing Director, Tyagarajar Mills Private Limited, Madurai.
Thanks for this opportunity, madam. I represent the textile industry. At the outset, I would like to tell you that the textile industry made full use of the post-COVID relaxations and policy support, which the government had liberally given, and came out of the pandemic crisis wonderfully well. In the last 2 years, the textile industry has been enjoying very good export orders, mostly on the back of the various countries favoring Indian products rather than Chinese products. Since October, November of this year, of last year, madam, we have been seeing a very relentless increase in the cotton prices. For the first time during the cotton season, during the peak of the cotton season, prices have been going up in a galloping manner, and they have gone up by 60 to 70% higher than the assured minimum support prices. Well, we are not able to see any reason, but we find that large multinationals are able to access monies at 2% and 3%, and they have been buying up a lot of cotton. And there has been some serious operations going on in the futures market. But one is, we are not, from the industry, we are not aware of what is the intricacy of it, but what we see is that the cotton prices have gone up very substantially. And we also think that the crop, which was expected at 360 lakhs, is probably going to be a little bit lower, a shade lower at 335 or 340. So to sustain this momentum which we picked up in the last 2 years, I think it's essential to have an import window open for about 40 to 50 lakh bales. So this is a very urgent need, which I thought I will bring it to your kind notice. Thank you so much.
Ms. Sunita Reddy, Managing Director, Apollo Hospitals Enterprise Limited, Chennai.
Good morning, madam. Such a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for taking time off for this interaction. First, I would like to thank you for your support during COVID. The central government gave us many incentives, among them the zeroizing of GST for medical consumables, and the short-term credit which was given at repo rate. I think it helped many healthcare institutions, not just the large ones, the corporates, but the small ones. Taking off from what you've done during COVID and looking at the future of healthcare, you spoke about investing into infrastructure. And I think as an industry, we are very committed to increasing investment into healthcare infrastructure. Instead of the consolidation that we're seeing, we want to build new facilities. And to do so, we deeply need some incentivization from the government. I do recognize that healthcare being on the concurrent list is both a state and central subject, but there is much that the center can do. If you could consider us like the benefits given to the manufacturing sector, PLI, we treat many human beings, and while they should not be looked at manufacturing, the services industry has great potential we have already made the country Atmanirbhar, but through medical value travel, there is so much we could do in terms of earning valuable foreign exchange. I therefore seek your support in giving us benefits such as interest subsidies. This is something that you've done during COVID. If you can do this again, I'm sure that there would be large amounts invested in infrastructure. But going beyond just the infrastructure, which has now become 50% of the total project cost, it used to be around 30%. It has become very expensive. I want to move on to access to healthcare. And here, the quantum of deduction for premiums for health insurance, the amount is only 25,000, and that does not give you a meaningful cover. I would request that you make this 50,000 for families, and increase the deduction for parents from 30,000 to 50,000, and this will bring more people into the insurance coverage ambit and therefore help increase in access to healthcare facilities. Much has been done by the Prime Minister through Ayushman Bharat and the digital health mission that was spoken about even on Saturday, but we believe that much can be done. The third issue I would like to raise is that we would like to do so much more for central government health employees, and the CGHS rates have been extremely low. And this has become a painful point both for us and for the central government employees. Please consider a revision. This has not been done for a decade. And also the public sector payments, which have not happened for years. So I think as listed companies, this has been raised in every board meeting. I seek your support and thank you for your time.
On your last 2 points, that is the CGHS rates, I think you have a point there. They have not been raised for a decade, and I think that this is something that the Health Ministry is looking at. So I wouldn't be able to give you a concrete answer, but I think there is definitely room to change those rates. And as regards payments, if there are accepted payments that are not made by the government, then please do send us the details. But if it's from public sector undertakings, you can give us those details too, but that's a separate issue that we'll have to look at individually.
Thank you, Mr. Somanathan.
Ms. Reddy, I would like to take your question on giving more exemption for medical from 25,000 to, you said 50,000, and for the older people also, the dependents also a little more. I am not too sure whether this alone will benefit you to expand the insurance in the system. Why I say that is now on the taxation front, we are moving away from exemptions. If you already know that in the personal income tax also, we have come up with a new regime where there are no exemptions at all, but the tax rates are lower. So if I keep incentivizing the old scheme, the new scheme will never be taken up. So the whole idea of the government is that we should have higher tax slabs or broader tax slabs, lower taxes, and as less exemptions as possible, because each product should sell on the strength of the product and not based on tax arbitrages which we have created for too many products.
Ms. Reddy, you mentioned about investment in health infrastructure. Government focus is equally on promoting health infrastructure in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, where the large corporates quite often doesn't go because of economies of scale do not work for them. But there is a scheme for higher viability gap funding to be given as a one-time support for hospitals to be set up in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, and at the same time work out a tie-up with Ayushman Health Mission, and so that there can be a long-term partnership as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sirs. We move on to Ms. Uma Shekhar, Managing Director, Avanita Textiles Private Limited, Coimbatore.
Thank you, ma'am, for many things done for textile industry, especially that PLI scheme and this ECL scheme, and Mitra. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Mr. Gopal Srinivasan, TVS Capital Services.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for continuing this tradition of the budget traveling from city to city. It's very welcome. I speak on behalf of the venture capital and private equity industry, and I think for us it's been a small mahotsav in terms of the budget. The manner in which it was conducted, with the Prime Minister meeting the industry onwards and all the senior officials interacting, has given us great encouragement. India at 100, as you so correctly pointed out, requires close to nearly $500 billion of VCPE funding each year, which is going to be close to about 8 to 9 times today's rate. And therefore, the 3 steps you've announced, formation of an expert committee to consider all system-wide issues to scale up the industry, the thematic fund of funds focused on getting more money into domestic capital into the industry, as well as the cap on LTCG surcharge are very, very welcome. So we thank you profusely for all these measures that the Finance Ministry has taken. From our point of view, the remaining agenda other than this, of course, is to look at the LTCG rates in the long term. The Revenue Secretary himself has made a very articulate statement on that, which I'm sure represents the Ministry's views, and we look forward to that in future budgets. The thing which is in our mind in terms of to-dos are 2. One is that the Startup India scheme started about 5-6 years ago. So we've been working with the Ministry and with the National Startup Council to reboot Startup India to Startup India 2.0. I think there are a lot of new learnings and opportunities that can be embedded. From my side personally, one thing that I would like to leave behind is looking at this Russian crisis which is going on. India has developed wonderful technology in payment systems. The government has made a visionary statement on the introduction of CBDC. Is it a thinking going on in the government now as how will the country have alternate payment systems internationally, so we are not at the mercy of one payment system that is controlled in a multilateral basis, comes out. Obviously, the second thing that comes out, which is a much spoken about 20-year theme, is the de-dollarization of India's reserves. So these 2 things, at least personally, come to my mind when I reflect on the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Thank you.
The first speaker has spoken about risk capital for farmer sector. And after Mr. Gopal Srinivasan has just spoken, one of the expectations in this budget is blended risk capital for farmer sector. So please, at the industry level, at the grassroots level, what can be the nuts and bolts of those kind of a blended capital funds one can work for them. The second one, sir, that you talked about a bilateral payment system. What we build is a global payment system. We should not any one-off aberrations into the global systems to look for bilateral systems to be developed. So the move forward has to be on increased global cooperation rather than trying to build bilateral deals. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. N. Srinivasan, Vice Chairman and Managing Director, the India Cements Limited, Chennai. Mike, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, madam. Great pleasure to see you and to see that you continue interaction with the industry. For a moment, I thought I was in the wrong place because I belong to the smokestack industry, not the modern industry. But I must compliment you on successive budgets which have addressed the macro problem facing India. Actually, today, if you have successfully steered India through the pandemic. We have 10 manufacturing locations. We have no problem anywhere. It's across India. In a sense, I think that, this can be debated, can be discussed, but I think a lot of it is behind us, and I think we have to get off our backside and work. The problem that India faces, of course, is the primarily, even before this Ukrainian crisis came, commodity prices were high. But that is occupational hazard. We have to deal with it. I mean, because it is not going to go away in a hurry. The only point that I want to make is, which I made to you earlier, which you have taken note of, is that India is the second largest producer of cement in the world. We produce about almost 400, 450 million tons of cement. Of course, China does 2.5 billion tons. But after that comes America with 60 million tons. So we are very huge. Unfortunately or fortunately, most of the limestone is in the south. 40% of limestone which is required for cement is in South India. So some fashion, although you recently were very kind enough to give an interview, unless this cement moves north, we will always have a problem of shortage in the north. Cement industry will be blamed for cartelizing. But what can we do? I mean, cement cannot be stored. If I store more than a certain amount of cement, we will be asked to close by the Ministry of Environment. So therefore, we have a real problem. I mean, the government has to find some, whereas there is no ordinary portable cement in the north at all. Projects are being held up. So some solution for that, I dare say, if I'm not considered forward, the minister may call us for a meeting. We will make a presentation as what could be solutions for this. Otherwise, we have no problem. I mean, your budget is excellent, and the fact that you listen to us is even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nirmala, for bringing out this aspect, particularly the production being more in South India, where the demand is all over the country. And in North India, the demand is a lot more than what is getting produced there. The recent initiative and this budget looks at in a very structured manner to improve logistic efficiencies. That how do we move goods from one part of the country to another, bring down logistics cost by various means. And that is something we would certainly like to work with the industry, and the Prime Minister in his vision of PM Gati Shakti has looking at that very comprehensively to bring down the logistic cost. Of course, then the cost of movement, whatever it can be minimized, there will be a cost of movement, and that ultimately has to be picked up by the consumers only. Thank you.
So if I understand you correctly, it is primarily a logistical and a transport problem. Is that it? Mr. Srinivasan, this is Somnathan. Yeah.
It is not, you see, it is, one can look at it as logistic, but if you look at the volume involved, see, after all, 200, 300 million tons have to move north. So it is, you can call it logistic, but it is much more than that. Which is why I think some opportunity given to us, as an industry, we'll come and make a presentation, discuss it with you, then out of that you can draw conclusions.
Mr. Srinivasan,
Yes.
I'll ensure that we organize a meeting also to have the surface transport and rail ministry people be in the meeting when you come over.
Yes.
But over and above the logistics, which is what is necessary for them to hear, if there's anything more, you can always send us a note prior to the meeting date so that we'll be prepared when you come.
So we'll prepare a detailed note which can be the basis of the discussion.
Yes, please. You send the note, we'll have the time, mutually convenient time fixed up so that you can come over and explain it to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to Ms. Rajakumari, Head Women Entrepreneur Cell, Varai Hotel, Madurai.
Respected Madam, I appreciate your budget 2022. அதில் ஒரு பெரிய ப்ளஸ் என்னென்னா மேடம், நல்ல ஸ்டெபிலிட்டியும் இது கிளாரிட்டியும் கொடுத்துருக்குறீங்க. அண்ட் ஆக்சுவலாக most of the industries are also happy about it. UN தீமில் வந்து இந்த வருஷம் it is gender equality for sustainable growth. So lots of initiatives have been brought up by our Prime Minister Ji for women empowerment and entrepreneurship, and a lot of schemes and loans and subsidies, very motivating. And there has been 4.3% allocation on the gender budget as well. And I have attended the CSW in the United Nations and represented for the women empowerment and entrepreneurship. But the major two concerns I would like to bring here is on the interest of women entrepreneurs, including the disability women and the differently abled and the marginalized women. Women are a big task force from kitchen to boardroom. They face a lot of peculiar challenges, responsibilities and commitments, and the level playing has to be established. They have to bring a sort of balance. So, Madam, the scoring has to be at the entry point, I feel. If the GST registrar for registering GST, I think it is below 40 lakhs, which has been the present scenario here. We would like to make an humble request whether that could be taken to 1 crore. And the service sector, I think it is 20 lakhs, which could be taken to 80 lakhs. And subsequently, the compost system from 1.5 to 3. And I'm sure I can understand the challenges implementing this, because the major will be the shadows of men behind, and lots of tinkering and corrections will be happening at that time. But some solutions, I feel like we could have a series of accreditation and certification for those who are filing under these benefits, and bringing a lots of check and control points so that the system itself should not be abused. And after the initial hazards, I think we'll involve, and it will take us a long way. And the next point I would like to insist on, Madam, like since it is post-corona, we have a lot of homepreneurs coming in. Of course, they are shining, and it's not very transparent. But when it comes to growing and scaling, there are a lot of gray areas. Certain things are holding them back. They are being treated without dignity. They are provoked towards litigation. And there is a ruler-slaver attitude among the officials, very sensitive and a psychological play on that. So these things, I think it can be addressed when decision-making panels are brought with women, and sensitizing officers, especially from the GST, to bring it on this board. So, Madam,
Sorry, just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Which is this category that you mentioned, ma'am?
For the GST registration, Madam?
No, when you started speaking about this part of your conversation, it relates to some set of people.
No, it's generally for the women when we address.
Okay.
It's for the women. So the national building and the ease of doing business, it stands more on the level playing. To set an example, என்னோட இதில் அப்சர்வேஷன் மேடம், கால்ஃபில் கூட பார்த்தீங்கன்னா லெவல் பிளேயிங்னா ஒரு 2 ஸ்டெப் முன்னாடி பெண்களுக்கு கொடுத்துருவாங்க. So that sort of thing, somewhere, some scoring.
நான் கோல்ஃப் விளையாடுனது இல்லம்மா, எனக்கு புரிஞ்ச மாதிரி ஒரு உதாரணம்.
நான் ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிள் சும்மா சொல்றேன் மேடம். லெவல் பிளேயிங்கோட இதுக்கு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங்.
மதுரையில் கோல்ஃப் விளையாட முடியுதா? கொஞ்சம் தண்ணி வைகையில தண்ணியே இருக்காதே.
இல்ல மேடம்,
எப்படி கோல்ஃப் கோர்ஸ் நடக்குது? பரவாயில்லைங்க. எல்லா விதத்திலும் தனிப்பட்ட மதுரை தான் இல்லைங்களா?
மீனாட்சி மேடம், இட்ஸ் ஃபார் டைனமிசம். And so we would like to have more mentoring cells should be brought for handling gender sensitive issues, madam. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Next we have Mr. Jayakumar Srinivasan, Director, Neyveli Lignite Corporation.
really privileged to get this opportunity, ma'am. And it's an opportunity to thank for various policy initiatives, particularly in the last year and a half, in terms of, for the power sector, in terms of Atmanirbhar liquidity scheme, which has really rejigged the power sector. And we are ready for the investments challenges that are ahead. Also, in terms of the national asset monetization pipeline, the Vivad Se Vishwas, all this has significantly contributed for the revitalization of the thing. The budget 22-23 has all the right ingredients for taking up the challenge of the this energy transition also. And a few suggestions over here, if it is possible to incorporate in some form that the kind of investment that will be needed up to 2030, the target-based imperatives. So some kind of tax concessions which used to be available for power sector when the demand was chasing supply. Now it is a supply-oriented thing where we have to set up nearly 5-fold increase in the capacity up to 2030. Can we have some similar kind of tax incentive is one part. The other is the asset monetization which we are taking up for unlocking value from the existing brownfield projects and trying to reinvest it in the new renewables. There are some GST implications which would take away the value from that. So if some thought can be given at that point of time. The third thing I will draw attention is on the coal sector side. Some of the captive mines which are allocated for end-use plants, if it is a long drawn distance, it is traveling through various states, and the GST compensation is adding to the already the long distance increases the delivered cost of coal, and this 400 rupees per ton of GST compensations, if it can be waived off for same entity. Now it is technically, because it is different state and different registration number, it is adding to the thing, and ultimately the power don't get delivered if it is not figuring in the merit order. Few suggestions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your suggestions. I'd also like to hear from you as to what are your plans on transitioning from thermal to anything else, which is more environment friendly. And I'm sure you can always meet us in the North Block and discuss this, being a government entity.
Most certainly. We'll come down.
Right?
Yeah.
Dr. G. Vishwanathan, Founder and Chancellor, Vellore Institute of Technology, Vellore.
Thank you, Madam, for the opportunity. I represent the education sector of the country. You know that we are lagging behind in education, particularly higher education. Our gross enrollment ratio is only about 27%. Our Prime Minister wants it to take to 50%, almost doubling. Unless we get your help, we will not be able to do this. The problem of availability, affordability, and quality. These are the three problems facing higher education, particularly higher education. Recently, the war in Ukraine has opened our eyes. We have around 20,000 students in Ukraine, mostly studying medicine because of the problem of availability and affordability. The Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, also mentioned about it yesterday and said that our students are going to small countries and they spend their money there, the hard-earned foreign exchange. This could be resolved by increasing the budget on education. For the last 50, 60 years, Commission after commission has recommended that 6% of the GDP should be spent on education. We have not crossed 3 or 3.5%. That's the main thing. The other thing is, already education is over-controlled. You must be knowing, wherever there is more control, there will be more corruption. That is what is happening in education. Nobody will tell you because it's very normal. We start with the taluk, district, state, and national level. Apart from it, I want you to help to cut down the cost, control the cost of education. Now we are paying 18% GST on construction of buildings. It increases the cost of education. Again, you have given exemption to the outsourced services only up to school level. I request you to extend it to the colleges and the universities also, so that the cost could be brought down, and poor and middle class also will have the opportunity to come and study in the colleges and universities. Another important point is the research. We are lagging behind in the world ranking, mainly because of research facilities and research personnel. There we require our help. I want a separate organization or bank which will take care of the needs of the higher education institutions in the country. Previously, whatever foreign exchange we earned through NRI students and foreign students, we were allowed to use it for import of equipments in the universities and colleges. Now it has been restricted to 5%, and that to buy scripts. I would request you to restore the old order so that it will be useful for us to import important equipments from outside the country. Another thing is, we are allowed only 15% of funding of the total to be kept for the corpus fund or spending in the future. It's not enough to create enough corpus fund. I would request you to increase that, maybe 25%, whatever it is, along after discussion with the officials, which will be useful for us to create more corpus funding, which will be useful to, like time of COVID or any other problems. These are the things I want to bring out. Overall, I would like you to help education so that this country can also compete with other countries and become an advanced country. Without higher education, particularly the professional education, we can never become an advanced country. Thank you very much.
First, on your point about spending 6% of the GDP on education, which commission after commission has said, I would also point out that first, this is a joint responsibility of center and states. It is not a union responsibility. In fact, primarily it is not a union responsibility. Second, commission after commission has also pointed out that India has one of the lowest tax to GDP ratios in the world. So 6% for education, 3% for health, certain percentage for defense, certain percentage for R&D. These are the demands that we continuously hear. But that will mean that our tax to GDP ratio has to double from its present level of 10 to 11%. But in your own remarks, you have said you want the taxes to be reduced further. So there is a conundrum. We cannot compare ourselves to countries which have tax to GDP ratios of 40%, like the United States, when we look at our expenditure side of the budget. So the expenditure side of the budget's growth will critically depend on the growth of the tax side of the budget also, and I would seek the cooperation of all those present here. If you can tell us where we can raise more taxes painlessly from all of you, because that will help us to then spend on health, on education, giving all these concessions. We'll be very happy to do it if we have the revenue, but without that, there are limitations. And it is probably 6% will come when the tax GDP ratio reaches what those commissions have said on the tax GDP ratio also. As regards the specific points on trusts, etc.
I think before Tarun comes in, I don't think anyone here will mistake me. It always helps to have a bureaucrat also talk in such situations. ஒரு அரசியல்ல இருக்கிறவங்க யாரும் சொல்ல முடியாத விஷயத்தை சிலது அதிகாரிகள் சொல்லிடுவாங்க. நான் சொல்ல விரும்பல,
நாங்கள் முயற்சி பண்ணுறோம் எஜுகேஷன் நிறைய ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ணணும்னு, பட் எங்களுக்கு ரிசோர்ஸ் லிமிட்டேஷனையும் நம்ம யோசிக்க வேண்டியிருக்கு. அதனால் நீங்கள் சொல்கிற ஒவ்வொரு பாயிண்ட்டையும் நான் மதிப்பு கொடுத்து கேட்டுக்கிறேன். நீங்கள் சொல்கிறது வெரி வேல்யூபிள் அண்ட் அப்சல்யூட்லி கிரிட்டிக்கல் பாயிண்ட்ஸ். பிரதமர் ஐயா அதை தான் முயற்சி பண்ணுறாரு. கெப்பாசிட்டி, காலேஜ் அட்மிஷன்ஸ், யூனிவர்சிட்டி அட்மிஷன், ப்ரொஃபஷனல் எஜுகேஷனுக்கு சீட்ஸ், increase the number of seats as much as we are increasing the number of aims all over the country அப்படின்னு சொல்கிறதெல்லாம் இருக்குது. ஆனால் அதுக்கு வேணுங்கிற ரிசோர்ஸ் நம்மளுக்கு மொபிலைஸ் ஆகணும். அதுக்கான முயற்சி பண்ணிகிட்ருக்கோம் through use of technology. But the tax base has to widen and it helps therefore to have Somanathan next to me. நான் சொல்ல முடியாத சில வேப்பக்காய் விஷயங்கள் அப்புறம் சொல்லிடலாம்.
The FS has already answered a bit of your question on the 6% GDP for education. I also want to tell you and the audience here that our tax to GDP ratio today is approximately 10.5. This year we might touch 11. So if I spend 6 here, then there is interest. So the other things he's already mentioned, so I'll not repeat that. The other thing that I want to say, which is your 15% issue, I'll come to that. This may not be true of VIT or some of those kind of institutions, but we also know that some of these no profit, no loss institutions are actually for huge profit institutions. And the profits are taken out through various means which we are also aware of. In spite of that, we are closing our eyes and allowing tax exemption to such institutions. I think there is also a need for people to rise up and say that there should be more curbs on the way you can spend money so that it is actually a no profit, no loss. I also want to tell you what you said was 15%. Let me explain to you what happens. If you get a donation of 100 rupees in the year 22-23 or 21-22, let's take 21-22, you have 5 years to spend 85 rupees out of that 100 rupees for the objectives that you have mentioned. The whole idea is that if people are giving donation for a cause and they are getting tax exemption from the government, then this money should be spent for that cause. Otherwise, the rich and the super rich people will have this trust operation where they can park their money. So asking that 85% of the money should be spent in the 5 years is not asking too much. 15% you can spend anywhere. Your issue about the corpus, if that is so, if somebody donates to your corpus, you can take it to the corpus. There is no bar under the present provisions that you cannot take it to the corpus. But if it is a corpus, then it cannot be used for the expenditure. If you use it for the expenditure, you have to replenish it over a period of time. So I think the provisions that are there have been kept because there is no tax there. So better that I have an objective of taking care of health, taking care of education, doing something else which is charitable, I should actually be spending money on those kind of things. So these are some conditions which are put up. If they are not there, then maybe the money may not be spent by everybody.
Thank you, sir. We next have Mr. S. Ilanahai, President, Chemical Industry Association.
Thank you for the opportunity. We would like to extend the PLI scheme for chemical industries also, madam, because it is one of the important industries in India which needs support. Second thing, that rationalization of the import duty for the basic blocks like ethylene, propylene and all, zero duty, and 10% for all other chemicals, it could be helpful to the industries. If there are dumping such chemicals, we would like to have 15% duty. The PLI scheme is not extended to chemical sector. Duty, when it comes, we want to have a uniform zero duty for all building blocks, ethylene, propylene, butylene, those things. And again, a rational 10% duty for all chemicals and 15% for chemicals which are being dumped to India from countries like China, so that it will be a protection for the domestic sector.
I don't remember the exact number, but for the chemicals, we have reduced the duties this time. We have not brought it to zero, but we have reduced the duties to 2.5 to 5% on the chemicals, I think polypropylene and ethylene also. The whole idea of the customs duty, for which a lot of discussion and consultation was held before this budget, was that whatever raw material or chemicals like this are not available in the country, reduce duties on them. Intermediate products which are not being made, there also you bring down the duties so that those could be imported. But if there's a PMP program, then allow the domestic industry to get into that. And for finished products which can be made in India or are made in India, you increase the duties, but increase them to moderate levels like 7.5 to 10%, so that the Indian industry remains competitive. So you can check it up. I think we have reduced the duties on chemicals in this particular budget.
Thank you, sir, for that clarification. We next have Mr. Sanjay Jayavardhanavelu, Chairman and Managing Director, Lakshmi Machine Works Limited, Coimbatore.
Respected Madam, thank you for having arranged this interactive session with us here today. I represent the capital equipment industry for both textile spinning as well as general engineering. And this is sometimes considered as the backbone mother of all manufacturing. Our industry is moving, as we know, towards from automation to digitization to AI. And we also have a chance now to export our products to many countries and increase the brand value of India. What we face when we export is not just technology or brand, but also financing. Most of the countries offer financing to their customers there, which are also being insured. So we have a chance to increase our exports manifold if that facility also could be provided to us. So a humble request is that if that can be also considered, ma'am. Thank you.
Dr. A. Shaktivel, President, Federation of Indian Export Organizations, Chennai.
Respected Honorable Minister and team of positive secretaries. Madam, this is the historic budget. Everybody says it's a growth-oriented budget, but I'll say especially it is export growth-oriented budget. Because whatever we requested, you have already given all the schemes which we asked for. This because you understand the export well as you are in a commerce minister. Madam, this PM Gati scheme, Gati Shakti scheme will really improve our infrastructure, especially that we are lack of manufacturing containers, which is the biggest problem now for the India. So you should ask your department encourage this container manufacturing and give the maximum support to the manufacturing of containers. Ma'am, this all other things which you have given, AGLJC, inter-equalization scheme, everything is beneficial for us. And SEJ also you have given a special revamp the scheme. And also you have given that embellishment, import of embellishment, that's also great help to the manufacturing sector. Madam, this fixing of owners of importers in case of non-realization export procedure and excess issuance of ROTEP and or scrip is really hitting us. Because now the importers get the benefit. They buy the license for now 70 to 75%, whereas we don't, we get only very lesser about. So what we have requested finance department is, please allow us to give issue the script by producing the bank realization certificate, so that importer will not have the burden on thing, and also they are not buying from especially from MSC exporters, because when even the banks, they want to buy it for the gold imports, because they think that taking the onus on their side, it's the biggest. So please consider that. And another thing, ma'am, same in that now really because the time has gone, all the license may be given 2 years extension. The last one, ma'am, this, as I said, that the container problem, again, after this war, it's a little more freight charges are increased. So you give me some support for the MSME sector for the freight we pay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Tarun, you or Somnathan, you want to say? Because that is something which you're working on anyway.
You, I think, have also sent in a suggestion to us on this, the scripts thing, that they should be allowed only after that it is confirmed that it is. Yeah. So we are working on it, and we'll soon come up with something on that. That suggestion is a very sensible and a very valid suggestion.
And extension of 2 years also.
What license is this?
No, the exim script can be extended for a validity for 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
So you want the validity to be increased?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Are you having a problem in selling your scripts now?
Yes, because the premium has come down so much. Nobody wants to buy it because they say that we will not take the responsibility of...
Partly because duties have been reduced. So the amount of scripts which can be used, because import duties have come down.
Not only, sir, what's happening, the onus of getting the realization after buying the script...
That point, no. Your first point on transferring the onus...
premium has come down.
But that's not the only reason. The amount of duties for which you can use script, the volume of import duties has come down because of cuts on edible oil, on so many other things. The market for customs duty payment has shrunk, in which these scripts have to be used. But your point on that is well taken.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Just, if I may just supplement. On these ROTTEP scripts, I want to misuse this opportunity to just transmit something to you, since you're from the Federation of Indian Exporters Organizations. We constantly get requests saying that please increase the rate of ROTTEP on this, ROSCTL on this, please increase the budget, etc. I think it has been made very clear in the policy, it's part of the cabinet approval, and it is in the press release, that these schemes are now fund-limited schemes. It is not an entitlement at a certain percentage for any volume of exports. The total amount of subsidy per annum has been capped, and there is a budget for it. That budget will grow at 10% per annum. So I think it is important for the exporters organizations to be aware of this and have realistic expectations. And when any rate changes are suggested, they should be suggested keeping this framework in mind. Because partly the PLI schemes are funded from the restructuring of the entire gamut of schemes. A certain amount has gone for PLI, a certain amount has been kept aside for ROTTEP and ROSCTL. So that is the fiscal envelope that's available. So within that, yes, changes can be made. And certainly procedural suggestions that you have just now made, that we'll certainly look at very sympathetically.
Thank you, sir. Next, Ms. Neena Reddy, Joint Managing Director, Savera Hotel and Shyam Group of Companies, Chennai.
Namaskaram, ma'am. This is a huge privilege to be sitting here and interacting with all of you. I thank the organizers for letting me in here. First of all, word of gratitude for what the central government has been doing for us as far as COVID is concerned. I think it has been keeping us safe. And on a very particular hospitality side, I would like to say that the Hotel Federation is already representing us on various aspects. Please look into that. Especially the Export Promotion Capital Goods EPCG, waiver of the annual weighted average clause. It will be of immense benefit to the entire industry recovering from COVID. Foreign earnings are low due to the pandemic, and achieving annual weighted average is difficult. As far as GST is concerned, it has made life easier for us personally doing business, because I think the schemes are making things easier for us to work. Common GST slab for all services across the hotels. Currently, the 4-star hotels, we have different rates for rooms, which is 12%, F&B, which is 5%, etc. If across the hotel GST is 5% for a 4-star hotel, it will enable growth. Business promotions. Campaign to promote tourism across the globe. Less time spent by the tourist on arrival at airports and immigration counters. First impression is the best impression to incentivize travel partners. Recommendations. Enable infrastructure and industry status for the entire hotel industry. Appropriate legislation will be required ASAP, please. Treat all earnings from foreigners as foreign exchange. Tax benefits for individuals and corporate to promote domestic tourism. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Next we have Mr. K. Suresh, President, Hindustan Chamber of Commerce, Chennai.
Good morning, Madam. Our hearty congratulations for presenting an excellent budget. We are having 3 issues, 2 on GST, 1 on taxation. India is the largest producer of millets in the world. United Nations General Assembly already declared 2023 as the year of millet. Many campaigns being held in our country to promote nutri-cereals across India. Government also, our central government also launched India's millet mission under the National Food Security Mission. So what our request is that as of today, when products based on flours of pulses is taxed at 5%, millet-based products may also be considered to be charged at the lower rate of 5% instead of 18%. This will definitely make the product affordable. It will be a step in the right direction in addressing the issue of malnutrition plaguing our country, combination of traditional Indian food with modern technology, processing and packaging can help the world rediscover the health benefits and refreshing the taste of food grains. This is the first issue which we are having. Next is this sailing yachts, sailing yachts. Mostly these yachts are used only for sports purposes, particularly Tamil Nadu having a longest coast. Now government also going to implement promotional activities for sports. And further, because of this development, we can send many people to the Olympics also. So when that is the situation, our request is that as of today, 18% being charged on the sailing yachts. Why can't we make it 5% so that, it will be promoting the sports, because mainly it is used for sports only. This is the second request, Madam. The third one is on the taxation side. For equity capital market, it's a well-known fact that retail participation is slowly improving. There's no doubt about it. In order to improve further, definitely we should think differently in the sense, the long-term capital gain which has been brought in, when the STT actually was brought in because of removing the long-term capital gain. But again, long-term capital gain also introduced sometimes back, rather few years back. The issue is that our idea, rather objective of the entire government is to improve the long-term savings of every citizen. So in order to do that, our request is that this long-term capital gain can be removed so that the revenue neutralization definitely you will have from STT volume improvement. There's no doubt about it, because I think is a well-known fact that tax collected through long-term capital gain is not that much phenomenal figure. So my request is that to bring in more retail participation for the investment mode. I'm not talking about speculation mode, investment mode. My request is that please drop the long-term and see that definitely your revenue will be threefold because of STT volume that will come from STT also. Thank you.
To respond. On your wheat, millet, sailing yacht, I've taken the points, though there'll be issues. You should also suggest to me what are the areas in which I can raise taxes, because the revenue neutral rate on for GST was 15.3. Today we are at 11.6. We are 4% down. And you will soon notice from 1st of July of this year, when the states will not get the compensation cess, their revenues will go down and they'll definitely face problems. So my request to you and to all of you sitting here is also to suggest that if I bring this down from 18 to 5, whatever I lose, what are the products or commodities, and you should go public with that so that people know that this is the demand of the people.
We'll do, sir. We'll do.
Second thing on LTCG, I want to share some figures with you. In the year 1920, I made people made 95,000 crores of capital, long-term capital gains. Can you beat it? 80% of those capital gains long-term were made by people earning 50 lakhs and more. So am I asking for this concession for people who are already, we are being accused of inequity in this country, that the rich are becoming richer and the poor are becoming poorer. If any relief is given, it will be given to people earning, and I can assure you that this year, it will not be 80%, it will be 90%, the way people have traded in the market this year. So I think we should actually, if you compare yourself with other countries, you will notice that the other countries are charging long-term capital gains tax at the applicable rate or at 25%, 30%. These are the kind of rates. In India, we have 10%. And what long-term? It is 12 months only. So I completely disagree with you that giving a relief will really, it will only increase the pockets of a few, it will increase money in the pockets of a few people. 10% is too low for a long-term capital gains tax.
No, sir. Our suggestion is that you can bring in some cap for the consideration of this long-term, exemption of long-term capital gain. I agree with you.
It's already there up to 1 lakh.
1 lakh?
1 lakh,
One
no,
lakh
that's
is
why,
tax-free.
that's not sufficient. That's what I'm saying.
No, why? So basically the whole idea is that I am not ready to pay these taxes. And I think the rich are saying that. That is the unfortunate part. It is not the poor who are saying that, or the middle class that is saying. I've told you, 80% of the long-term capital gains have been made by people earning 50 lakhs and more per annum. These 50 lakhs and more would constitute about 0.1 or 0.12% of the population of this country. Please don't ask for these tax concessions. It is quite embarrassing.
No, so you can increase the limit, sir. That's
Why should we increase the limit? I think the limit should go away for people earning more than 20 lakhs. They should pay, if I make money, I should pay taxes. That should be the principle. Not that I'll make money, I'll not pay taxes. This poor man will make money, he'll pay taxes.
No, sir. STT we brought in because of this only. That's why
I would say, I'll give you a counter proposal that I'll make it applicable rate, which in your case might be 42%, and remove the STT. Is that fine?
No. So this millet and sailing yacht, yeah, please.
Next, we move on to Dr. Nalli Kuppaswamy, Managing Director, Nalli Silks Private Limited, Chennai.
மதிப்பிற்குரிய மத்திய நிதியமைச்சர் திருமதி நிர்மலா சீதாராமன் அவர்களே, அரசு உயர் அதிகாரிகளே, சக தொழில் வர்த்தகத்துறை நண்பர்களே, வணக்கம். டெக்ஸ்டைல் ட்ரேடில் நாங்கள் எல்லோரும் திருப்தியாக இருக்கோம். இந்த பட்ஜெட்னால் நல்லது தான் தவிர எங்களுக்கு குறைன்னு சொல்கிறதுக்கு ஒன்றும் இல்லை. தயவுசெய்து மன்னிக்கணும், நான் தமிழில் பேசுகிறது எனக்கு சுலபமாக இருக்கின்ற காரணத்தினால. ஆனால் இந்த சந்தர்ப்பத்தில் மத்திய அரசின் செயல்பாடு பட்ஜெட்டு சம்மந்தப்படாது ஒரு பாராட்டு சொல்லலாம்னு நினைக்கிறேன். மாண்புமிகு அமைச்சர் எனக்கு அனுமதி கொடுத்த 2 நிமிஷம். நான் 2018 ஒரு தரம் பாம்பேக்கு போயிட்டு இருக்கும். என் பக்கத்தில் ஒருத்தர் உட்காந்துருந்தார். அவர் நான் விசிட்டிங் கார்டு கொடுத்தேன். அவர் விசிட்டிங் கார்டு கொடுத்து அவர் கன்ஸ்ட்ரக்ஷன் கம்பெனி நடத்திட்டு இருந்தார். அவர் சொன்னார், அப்போது 2014 நம்ம அரசு பொறுப்புக்கு வந்தது, அதுக்கு 4 வருஷம் கழிச்சு. அவர் சொன்னார், நிறைய விஷயங்கள் அரசில் மாறுதல் நல்லது நடந்திருக்கு, பொதுமக்களுக்கு தெரியறதில்ல. எங்களை மாதிரி அரசோட சம்மந்தம் உள்ளவங்களுக்கு தான் தெரியறது. நீங்கள் தெரிஞ்சுக்க நீங்கள் 4 பேர் சொல்லலாம்னு சொன்னார். எனக்கு அதுக்கப்புறம் சந்தர்ப்பம் கிடைக்கல, இங்கே அதை பற்றி சொல்லணும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். பெரிய பெரிய கான்ட்ராக்ட்ஸ் எடுத்து அவங்க செஞ்சுட்டு இருந்தாங்க. அப்போ ஏதோ ஒரு கான்ட்ராக்ட் அரசு வந்த பிறகு ஒரு கான்ட்ராக்ட் கொடுத்துருந்தாங்க. பட் ரொம்ப டெக்னாலஜி, மாடர்ன் டெக்னாலஜி உபயோகப்படுத்த வேண்டிய ஒரு கான்ட்ராக்ட். ஆகையினால் அவங்க ஒரு இட்டாலியன் கம்பெனி அவங்களோட பார்ட்னர்ஷிப் சேர்த்துட்டு அதை செய்ய ஆரம்பித்தாங்க. அவர் சொன்னார், அப்போது ஒரு பிளான் அவங்க அங்கேருந்து கொடுக்குறாங்க, எல்லாமே இமெயில் மூலியமாக தான். அதை பார்த்துட்டு இவங்க அனுப்பிச்ச பிறகு அவங்க அப்ரூவல் கொடுத்த பிறகு நீங்கள் ஒர்க் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணுங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருந்தாங்க. ஆனால் எந்த ஒரு காரணத்துக்காக நீங்கள் செக்ரட்டேரியட்டுக்கு அலைய வேண்டாம், அந்த ஒர்க் நடத்திடுங்க. அங்கே ஏதோ சந்தேகங்கள் இருந்தால் பிளான் எங்கள் இன்ஜினியர் போய் அவர்கிட்ட கேட்டுங்கன்ட்டு ஒர்க்கு நடக்கும்போது ஒவ்வொரு வாரம் இதர் சாட்டர்டே ஒரு மண்டேன்னு வச்சுங்க, நீங்கள் பில்லு போட்டு அனுப்பிச்சிங்க, அதுவும் இமெயில் தான். உங்களுக்கு 24 ஹவர்ஸில் உங்கள் அக்கௌண்ட்டில் கிரெடிட் ஆகிடும் உங்கள் அமௌண்ட்டு அப்படின்ட்டு. அப்படி கிரெடிட் ஆகலைன்னா நீங்கள் வந்து பிஎம் ஆஃபீஸ்க்கு ஒரு கம்ப்ளைண்ட், அது இது இமெயில் மூலியமாக அனுப்புங்கன்ட்டு. நாங்கள் ஒர்க் ஆரம்பித்து 1 வருஷம் ஆச்சு, இது வரைக்கும் நான் பிஎம் ஆஃபீஸ்க்கு கம்ப்ளைண்ட் பண்ணுற மாதிரி ஒரு நிகழ்ச்சியும் இல்லை. நாங்கள் எங்கள் டைம் பூரா உனக்கு ஸ்பாட்டில் இருக்கோம், எங்கேயும் அலையிறதில்லை, எங்கேயும் காத்துட்டுருக்கிறது இல்லைன்னு. இதை நான் உங்களுக்கு யாருக்காவது சொல்லணும்னு நினச்சிட்டு இருந்தேன். சம்மந்தப்பட்டவங்க இருக்கும்போது சொல்கிறதுக்கு ஒரு வாய்ப்பு கிடைச்சிது. எல்லோரும் திருப்தியாக இருக்கும், யாருக்கும் ஒரு விதமான குறையும் இல்லை. நான் என்னுடைய ட்ரேடு சம்மந்தப்பட்ட வரைக்கும் சொல்கிறேன். நன்றி சொல்கிற ஒரு வாய்ப்பாக தான் இந்த சந்தர்ப்பத்தை நான் எடுத்துக்கொண்டேன். நீங்கள் வாய்ப்பு கொடுத்ததுக்கு நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
I think we will be having time only for one more question, though we will stop at the questions. People who have their comments or those who have some suggestions can still put in their queries to us by mail, and we will see that the team gets those specific comments so that they can probably look up and take decisions based on them later. So the last question will be from J. Chandrasekharan from Watson Envirotech Private Limited.
Thank you, madam. I'm a startup, and I'm happy to say that the ease of handling documents or getting registered or doing anything online through the startup initiative is really commendable. Past 7 years, I've never visited any government office. Thank you. The point is, we are doing natural water purifiers which are non-electricity based. But there is no, in the lexicon of GST, water purifier at all. It comes under the industrial category, under liquid and gas purification system. So we request, and the GST is also 18%. We request you to make it 5%, so that these non-electricity based standalone filters can be given to the rural poor. In spite of this Jal Jeevan mission, water goes to the last mile through the tap, but whether it is potable or not is a big question. We have done close to 4 lakh households, which is the technology from CSIR. And this is the only product which is accredited by DST and also in the Jal mission. Since GST came, I had been putting this request again and again. In fact, the old VAT had 5%. So if you could make it 5% for non-electricity based water purifiers, that would be a great help for the poor people. Thank you, madam. Thanks for the opportunity.
We come to the end of this post-budget interaction with representatives from the industry and trade. To just summarize what we had discussed here, this morning the Honorable FM set the tone with remarks about growth-oriented budget, and the discussion continued with participation from all sectors of economy. We had large and medium enterprises, we had small and micro units, fresh startups, we had associations representing various sectors, and the questions were varied, and comments, queries and suggestions also were put forth. We had a few issues which were discussed, including providing industry status for tourism and hospitality, extension of R&D facilities in the countries, incentives to improve women participation in workforce, enabling an ecosystem for technology, mechanisms to invigorate the textile mill sector, investments into health infrastructure, review of health insurance rates by the government, systematic interventions for capital infusion in industry, blended finance for the pharma sector, resolution for nationwide logistics and transportation of bulk material, budgetary allocation for education. We had a query on PLI for chemicals and rationalization of import duty structure. We had mechanisms to further strengthen export competitiveness, especially on scrips. There was a request for reduction in the rate of long-term capital gains. And we also had an issue relating to the incentives for social enterprises, especially in the environment sector. So that was what we had time to discuss today. As we come to the end of this program, I place on record heartfelt gratitude to each and every person present here today who represented their sector with their queries, comments, and suggestions. You have made this program a success with your meaningful participation. We thank Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, for leading the discussion and responding to the queries raised here. Heartfelt gratitude to the panel of secretaries from the ministry who have accompanied Madam and who have added their valuable comments wherever required to make the discussion fruitful. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me? I'm sorry, we had a few more questions, but we could not put them before the Honorable Minister. We will take it up and pass it on to the team in Delhi. Thank you.